Now that Skeleton Crew is over, it's time for a roundup of all the biggest Star Wars Easter eggs and references sprinkled throughout the series. And because the show was so heavily inspired by movies like E.T. and The Goonies, I included many references made to those films as well. Let's get started with the first episode. Brutus, the wolf-like pirate, is a Shistavenin, a species first seen in the theatrical cut of Star Wars A New Hope. The character named Lax Sivrak appeared in the Mos Eisley Cantina and was made using an off-the-shelf Halloween mask. George Lucas disliked its basic appearance, and when he made the special editions of Star Wars, Sivrak was removed from the cantina and replaced with a new, more complex-looking alien named Ketwal. But Shistavenin characters continued to appear throughout Star Wars, and Brutus has taken the species full circle, bringing it back into live action. Wim eats cereal with milk for breakfast, just like Cyril Karn did in Andor, and just like kids do in the real world. In Star Wars, cereal is called Crunchies, and of course the milk is a different color. Although I wouldn't classify Wim's milk as blue milk, it looks far less appetizing. The kids' school uniforms have Tianese symbols on them. That was an alphabet found in Star Wars that would be like the equivalent of our Greek alphabet. So far in canon, we've only ever seen them written in one of the sacred Jedi texts. Tianese is a very old language in the Star Wars galaxy, so its appearance on At-Aten is a clue to its mysterious origins, the same as Wim's mint condition Old Republic credit. That said, Arabesh does appear frequently on the planet as well, labeling buildings, including the school, which is simply called At-Aten Middle School. One of Wim's neighbors is seen walking a frog dog down the sidewalk in multiple scenes. It sure seems like it's a pet for the Ithorian, but they're actually sentient. According to the Alien Archive reference book, frog dogs would often allow themselves to be kept as pets so they could live an easy life with a constant food source. But they were also used to complete secretive tasks because they were so unassuming. So maybe this frog dog is deep undercover, trying to figure out what the hell is going on beneath the barrier of At-Aten. An RX series pilot droid can be seen driving Wim and Neil to school, which is interesting. Those droids were first created as pilots for Star Tours and have since been seen holding a variety of jobs from disc jockey to card dealer. Bonj Falfa, the older bully who taunts Fern about a speeder bike race, is named after Bod Falfa, Harrison Ford's similar character from George Lucas's movie American Graffiti. Wim's storybooks tell 3 different tales about Jedi named Lena and Druin, and one about a group of knights who build a temple with the Force and hide it underground until their help was needed. Maybe the most fun part of translating the book is realizing that Neil is quoting a Sith from one of the stories when he tells Wim, "You should not have come here." I did a whole video about the translations if you want to learn more. While trying to act cool meeting Firm, Wim says her bike is totally wizard. That's a term we hear Kitster use to describe Anakin racing in the Boonta Eve Classic pod race in The Phantom Menace. I've got to credit Princess and Scoundrel podcast for catching this one, but the graffiti on the wall says Turd Eater, which is hilarious. When Wim goes to get Neil to help him find the buried hatch in the woods, he first sees his friend's little siblings, Jorko, Jobo, and Tulu, who are all watching a curious-looking hologram in the living room. If you've never seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, you know what? You should watch it. It's like a rite of passage at this point. But these acrobats were first seen in 1978 as a hologram Chewbacca's son Lumpy watched. The characters included the Ringmaster, a gymnast called the Great Zorbak, and 2 jugglers called the Rico Brothers. Wim talks about how some Jedi temples were able to lower down into the ground to protect themselves in times of danger. He reads about it in his storybook, but he is absolutely correct. In Star Wars Rebels, we visit a Jedi temple on Lothal several times. It had mostly buried itself in the planet, and Kanan and Ezra had to use the Force to raise it back up. During their second visit, they raised it up further to visit a different level. And the third time we see it, the Empire excavated around it to get deeper rather than raise it up. It eventually completely sunk into the planet to protect its connection to the mystical world between worlds. When Wim activates the buried ship, composer Mick Giacchino uses a familiar-sounding musical cue twice. You can hear it in Return of the Jedi when Leia blasts 2 stormtroopers during the Battle of Endor. In the second episode, we meet the droid first mate of the mysterious ship named SM-33. His name is a reference to Smee, Captain Hook's bosun in the Peter Pan stories. While searching his databanks for the planet At-Aten, 33 offers up 3 other worlds as options, and 2 of them are places we've seen before. Adelon was a remote planet in the Outer Rim that served as a base for Phoenix Cell of the Rebel Alliance during Seasons 2 and 3 of Star Wars Rebels. It was discovered by the droid Chopper, and a mysterious being known as the Bindu called it home. Aldhani will be familiar to fans of Andor. That's where Cassian and several other rebels stole millions of credits from the Empire. SM-33 takes the kids of Skeleton Crew to Port Borgo, where they hope to find directions back to At-Aten. That would appear to be another name for Borgo Prime, a black market port first created for the Legends book Young Jedi Adventures Shadow Academy, where it was described as a spaceport built into an asteroid filled with people who have no conscience, thieves, murderers, creatures who would just as soon kill you as greet you. In Legends, it had a connection to the Imperial Remnant, and it's possible that's still the case since we've seen the Empire working with pirates in The Mandalorian. According to the in-universe reference book The Smuggler's Guide, it was located along the Hydean Way not too far from Mandalore. The pirate ships docked at Port Borgo are all painted with the same black striped colors as Gorian Shard's Cumulus-class Corsair, which we saw destroyed in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. The kids are taken to Port Borgo by a teak ferryman. That species first appeared in the Battle for Endor made-for-TV movie. Like we see in Skeleton Crew, they were small but fast, moving almost as a blur. Wim calls his credits dataries, which is a more rare term for money in Star Wars. Qui-Gon Jinn does tell Wata he has 20,000 Republic dataries in The Phantom Menace, but most people simply say credits. The kids come across what appears to be a brothel in Port Borgo, and outside we can see an Escagian, like the dancer Yarna Del Gargan from Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. The other character is a Thelan like Ristal Sant, another member of Jabba's court that was introduced in the special editions. KB comes across some cute winged creatures that are later set free from their cages. The creature design is based on Fuzzball, a character from Captain EO, which was co-written by George Lucas and shown at Disney theme parks from 1986 to 1998. And Fuzzball isn't the only potential Easter egg from Captain EO. Neil shares some similarities with the elephant-like character Hooter. A pirate is seen getting a tattoo of the Hutt cartel insignia before the kids bump into him and ruin it. That symbol was first seen on Jabba the Hutt's arm in Return of the Jedi. The tattoo artist is a D8 series droid, the same model as the torture droid from the depths of Jabba's palace. But this one is covered in tattoos of his own, or just like decals or marks or something. Back on At-Aten, the safety droids run into Wendell in the woods as they search for the source of the seismic activity caused by the ship launching. The shots of the droids with their flashlights in the woods is very similar to some shots in E.T. of government agents lurking in the forest. In Episode 3, Jod has to go rescue SM-33 from a droid depot. There he runs into a CZ Zeri's business communications droid, an RA-7 protocol droid, and a B-1 battle droid from the Clone Wars who asks if they won the war. The Ishi-Tib pirate Binjar Pranik is voiced by Alfred Molina, who played Dr. Octopus in the Spider-Man movies, Satipo in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and tons of other great film characters in between. During the Onyx Cinder's escape from Port Borgo, Jod gets the ship caught on a fuel line. This is similar to Poe and Finn's escape from the First Order Star Destroyer Finalizer in The Force Awakens. Shout out to Blast Points Podcast for pointing this next one out to me. You can see what appears to be a Starspeeder 1000 flying around near Port Borgo, which is the same ship from Star Tours. I wouldn't be surprised if we wind up seeing Port Borgo as a future location for the ride. The owl-like character Kim knows Jod as Crimson Jack, which is the name of another Star Wars pirate from the old 70s Marvel Star Wars comics. He also appears in the canon Halcyon Legacy comics that take place during the sequel trilogy movies. Kim's observatory looks like it takes some inspiration from Agra's observatory in the Jim Henson film The Dark Crystal. Kim herself shares some similarities with Agra, but also other owl characters like Archimedes from The Sword and the Stone. We learn that At-Aten is one of the jewels of the Old Republic, and we see an ancient scroll covered in Arabesh. It is translatable, but it isn't very sensible. There's some talk about worlds that were open being closed and hidden away by the Republic. The Great Works are mentioned, but there aren't any notable secrets hidden in the scroll. The X-Wings that chase the Onyx Cinder away from Kim's moon have different cannons on their lower wings to indicate that they fire ion weapons instead of standard laser blasts. In Episode 4, the situation between the Troik and the Hatan on At-Akron is very similar to the events of the Obi-Wan and Anakin comic by Charles Soule. Kenobi and his Padawan travel to the planet Carnelion 4, where a generational war is going on between two groups on an isolated planet, and the Jedi have to find out how to stop it. The Troik and the Hatan are fighting over some stolen Eopes. The creatures seen on At-Akron are a horned version of what we're used to seeing on Tatooine. Some of the soldiers on the planet appear to be wearing Imperial helmets that seem to match those worn by General Veers or Mud Troopers. General Strix did mention trading with Offworlders, so maybe they're getting a hold of some unused Imperial gear. In Episode 5, SM-33 has a restraining bolt installed on the planet Lenupa, a device we've seen placed on tons of droids throughout Star Wars that restricts their behavior. Lenupa officials claim it's because droids have been used as weapons in the past, which is an obvious reference to the battle droids of the prequels. The hotel manager tells Jod the banking clan is currently vacationing in the resort. They were members of the Confederacy of Independent Systems during the Clone Wars, and their Mune leader, San Hill, was seen in Attack of the Clones. We later see a group of Munes relaxing in the mud pits, and their headquarters on Scipio are mentioned as well. That world was seen in the Clone Wars series. The bounty hunter Pocket appears to be an Umbaran or maybe a Cage. Her hair reminds me of a Cage character from the High Republic comics named Barash Sylvain. Umbarans are often seen to be bald, but could have hair, and Pocket's eyes look more Umbaran than Cage. That species was first seen in Attack of the Clones in the form of Sly Moore, and some of the best episodes of the Clone Wars take place on Umbara, showing clones battling Umbarans. Pocket says she no longer works for the Bounty Hunters Guild and hasn't checked the pucks in a while. The Bounty Hunters Guild should be familiar to fans of The Mandalorian back when Greef Karga was a guildmaster on Navarro and offered bounty pucks to Din in the very first episode. Pocket knows Jod by the name Dash Zinton, which may be inspired by another scoundrel character from Shadows of the Empire, Dash Rindar. We see a Hutt relaxing in the mud baths, and he eats a Trogloff, a tiny species that was first created for The Last Jedi, seen running a game on Canto Bight. The traps encountered by Jod and the kids are likely inspired by similar traps seen in movies like Indiana Jones and the Goonies. The decapitation trap is basically the penitent man trap from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and the kids being chased by villains while trying to solve a puzzle is similar to the organ puzzle in the Goonies. The pirate name Rinid is Donner spelled backwards, and Richard Donner directed the Goonies. Tak Rinid's treasure vault holds a familiar relic inside, the Ark of the Covenant. It's hard to tell for sure, but I expect that's actually the Star Wars version, the Ryloth Ark. It was first seen in the Clone Wars being stolen from Ryloth by Wat Tambor. Since then, it's popped up as an Easter egg in Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Lego Star Wars, and more. The lightsaber whimsies in the treasure vault definitely looks like it could be from the High Republic era or older, with the light metal and gold color scheme. In the 6th episode, the kids all travel down a giant slide, which is yet another scene inspired by the Goonies, and we can throw in a dash of Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back as well. When Jod interrupts a group of people visiting the resort, one of them is the same species as Ubla Mulbro, the Zydek opera singer briefly seen in The Last Jedi. The trash crabs are full of some fun Easter eggs, as they are seen using various Star Wars props as their shells. You can see a protocol droid leg, an R5 droid head, a stormtrooper helmet, a Marksman H training remote, and more. Whim's claim that their ability to speak means they're intelligent definitely seems like a callback to Qui-Gon's line that the ability to speak does not automatically mean someone is intelligent. The giant crab was nicknamed Tetanus by the stop-motion crew that animated her. That crew was Tippett Studios, founded by Phil Tippett, who did all the stop-motion for the Star Wars original trilogy. The names of the animators were included on Tetanus herself, written on a plaque in Arabesh, but you can also find a full R2 droid, a KX security droid, a protocol droid, and more stuck onto her massive shell. In Episode 7, the cobbled-together communication device reminds me of E.T. and the speak and spell he uses to communicate with his people. The device even somewhat resembles E.T.'s ship. Neil's mom, Numa, almost says, "I've got a bad feeling about this," a classic Star Wars line, but she's cut off by the security droids. Glurb, the Quarren pirate, flies the same kind of starfighter we first saw pirates using in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Kona's armor looks to me like it's repurposed patrol trooper armor, first seen in Solo: A Star Wars Story. While Jod pretends to be a Republic emissary, he asks the security droids to bring him their finest refreshments, and they oblige by bringing Cerveza Cristal. Cerveza Cristal. The security droids tell Jod there are 1,139 vaults on At-Atin. That's one more than 1138, a number that's been used several times throughout Star Wars as a reference to George Lucas's first film. In the season finale, the droid supervisor seems like yet another artificial overlord influenced by HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It also reminded me of Otto from WALL-E being in charge of an entire society, but that character is also a HAL clone. At least the supervisor seemed more friendly. The kids and Wendell racing around on their hoverbikes has to be another reference to the genre that inspired Skeleton Crew, calling back to the climax of E.T. When the New Republic arrives, the X-Wing pilots announce setting their shields to double forward, which seems like language lifted directly from the video game Star Wars Squadrons. The B-Wings use their composite beams for the first time in live action. That was first seen in Star Wars Rebels as the Starfighter was introduced, and is a component you can install in Star Wars Squadrons. And last but not least, I guess I'll just mention Vane in general. I don't consider him an Easter egg because he had a significant speaking role in The Mandalorian and was easily visible throughout Skeleton Crew, but I was also surprised at how little he was used. I figured he would be one of the primary villains, but he was just kinda hanging around most of the time, so I guess I should mention him. But those are all the most significant Easter eggs and references I caught in Skeleton Crew. Let me know what I missed in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page for our video reactions and watch-alongs for every episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.